Hello, everybody. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Coach's
Hello.
Corner. This wonderful Sunday, actually Mother's Day here in the US and Canada as well. I found out, shout out to all the mothers, and we're sending you all love and joy on your special day. And you know what? Let's just dedicate this one to all the mothers out there
Yeah.
because everybody can use personal development, right? Right, guys? So, but yeah, my name is
That's
Jamel
right.
Matias. My name is Jamel Matias. I'm a certified mindset success coach. And basically, my brand is Believe in the Unseen. So it's all about believing in yourself, believing in that goal that's already there waiting for you, and also believing that you can achieve it. So my purpose is to reveal the potential that's already there within you and guide you to your truest desires because you have this hidden potential that's already there. So I help individuals, entrepreneurs, and business owners basically achieve higher versions of themselves and get to those results, right? So I'm in Maryland and in the US, and I'm going to pass it to my awesome colleague, Alicia.
Hello, everybody. My name is Alicia Espinosa. I am in Sweden, and I am a success mindset and values coach. And I believe that everybody has a diamond within, and that we just need to let it come down up so we can shine like a diamond. So I help people to create a life that feels good on the inside and not just looks good on the outside. But I don't know what happened with my thumb today. Paul,
Thank you, Alicia. And yes, happy Mother's Day to all the beautiful moms out there. And my name is Paul Wooters. I'm in Burlington, Ontario, Canada. And I am a Proctor Gallagher consultant, mindset success coach, speaker, author, adventure traveler. But it wasn't always this way. I thought I was doing the work. I set goals. I was thinking positive, but the results weren't matching. And that's why now I have devoted myself to helping you achieve your most elusive personal and professional goals, helping you to create the life that you truly want and deserve, and to help you live to your greatest possibilities. Jamel.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. It's always a pleasure sharing this material, with my colleagues here. And, I'm sure it's going to be something that you've been seeking, right? So we've been doing these for several months. Make sure you watch some replays because there's so much value here. And not just to be entertained. I know we have some entertaining stories and awesome things that we share, but this is for you to make a shift, right? And shift to the version of you that basically achieves whatever that you desire. And we desire things for growth. We desire things to be more, do more, and have more. And just getting knowledge is the tip of the iceberg, right? You have to take action towards that version of you. Being uncomfortable sheds the old self. So it's interesting looking at this article. Again, this is part 2 of the common denominator of success. And, this is extremely important article where there's so much value here. And I think I mentioned before, I did like a 60-day challenge reading this over and over and over. And what happens with repetition, it basically helps you learn. You see things in yourself that you didn't see before, and you develop as a person. So what is the common denominator of success? I want to continue where we left off. For those that don't know, this article is basically from a speech by Mr. Gray, Earl Gray, I believe, Ian Gray. So it was kind of broken down into this format, so that way you can utilize it. So let me, what jumps at me real quick, let's just start here. Why are successful people able to do things they don't like to do, while unsuccessful people don't? Yeah, let's just throw that out there and see what happens. Anybody want to respond to that?
Sure. So I think the bottom line here, or the most important part, is that successful people are influenced by the desire for pleasing results, whereas other people are influenced by the desire for a pleasing method, and they become inclined to be satisfied with the results that they can get by doing things that they like to do. And so, they ask, you might ask yourself, so why are successful people able to do the things that they don't like to do while others are not? Well, successful people have a purpose. And if that purpose is strong enough to make them form the habit of doing the things that they don't like to do in order to accomplish the purpose that they want to accomplish. Now, the average person is really highly resistant to change, right? People are resistant to change, even if it's for their own improvement. And so they are prone to, escape the efforts that persuade them to do something that they don't want to do. And it's not because you were born with certain dislikes that are unique to you, and successful people are not. They don't have those things. They are. They just develop the habit because they are doing the things, moving towards their goal, because they are focused on that purpose that they have identified. Alicia.
Yeah, I put here things they like to do, they don't like to do. As that people think that we need to like everything that we do. Sometimes we need to do things that are uncomfortable, because that that things make us grow and develop ourselves. And I also agree with the purpose, that people that do the thing is because the purpose is so big. The purpose is so big that is bigger than the fear of the uncomfortable that they feel to doing things. And I feel sometimes like when I'm preparing something, I the fear, these guys that I always talk to, they come with the reasons why it's so uncomfortable to do this, why you should. They mask the things, and get this to, like, it's for me to be safe, to this, that, but it's because it's uncomfortable doing that. So sometimes I need to be very hard to say, wait, what is my purpose here? I can give you an example. I decided last year that I wanted to create a community only for men. And then these guys started, like, why? Why should you create it a community for men? You are a woman, you are that, all these things. And I say, but I have been coaching hundreds of men, and I know the issues. But because I was listening to this, I was delaying my thing, but because it was uncomfortable to talk to people about that. And then I decided, no, I'm going to do that. So I am creating now, but all the time, this guy is like, no, why are you going to do that? All the time. And it's because it's uncomfortable to do that, to do things. But my purpose is bigger than being in the comfortable zone.
I love it. I love it. And speaking of purpose, purpose is essential. That burning desire, right? What do you really desire? And what that does, it drives you to your higher self and to the result. because you're connected to it at a vibrational state. Remember the law of vibration, right? Everything moves, nothing rests. We're in an ocean of motion. So you're connecting with it spiritually as well, or on an energetic plane. And the purpose, it's so funny because I'm going to do a little bit of reading here, but they talk, this is a great segue into these habits that we're about to discuss. So let me share my screen here, if I can. There we go. The common denominator of success. So again, this is based on a speech by Albert Ian Gray, and he was looking for the definition of success. He was a highly successful executive for many years, and the speech, a lot of authors refer to it, use pieces of it, but it's packed with so much. So let's continue here. Many people with whom I have discussed this common denominator of success have said at this point, but I have a family to support and I have to have a living for my family and myself. Isn't that enough of a purpose? Right? Most people would think that. He says, no, it isn't. It isn't a sufficiently strong purpose to make you form the habit of doing the things that you don't like to do, for the very simple reason that it is easy to adjust ourselves to the hardships of a poor living than it is to adjust ourselves to the hardships of making a better one. That's one of my favorite lines there. Now, if you doubt me, just think of all the things you're willing to go without in order to avoid doing the things you don't like to do. All of which seems to prove that the strength that holds you to your purpose is not your own strength, but the strength of the purpose itself. Wow. Right? So the strength of the purpose itself. So this is why you got to get very clear on what your purpose is. Now, let's see why habit belongs so importantly in this common denominator of success. So then he gets into the habits here. And I just love this part. Forgive me for reading this because I really wanted to share this part. People are creatures of habit, just as machines are creatures of momentum. Huge, right? For habit is nothing more or less than momentum translated from the concrete into the abstract. That is massive. Can you picture the problem that would face our mechanical engineers if there were no such thing as momentum? Remember, momentum is movement, action, energy, right? Speed would be impossible because the highest speed at which any vehicle could be moved, excuse me, could be moved would be the first speed at which it could be broken away. Excuse me. So speed would be impossible because the highest speed at which any vehicle could be moved would be the first speed at which it could be broken away from a standstill. So elevators could not be made to rise, airplanes could not be made to fly, and the entire world of mechanics would find itself in a total state of helplessness. Then who are you and I to think that we can do with our own human nature what the finest engineers in the world could not do with the finest machinery that was ever built? Every single qualification for success is acquired through habit. People form habits and habits form futures. If you do not deliberately form good habits, then unconsciously you form bad ones. You are the kind of person you are because you have formed the habit of being that kind of person. And the only way you can change is through changing habits. That's a great segue into these habits. Anybody want to share anything? Sorry for reading all that. I really wanted to hammer home some good points there.
Now, I was thinking
Yeah,
about the habits because sometimes we have a habit that we have many years with that habit. At the beginning, that habit it help us to what is the name? I remember. I don't know, but this like it help us to satisfy a need. You know. So, for example, if somebody um, was not a person that was popular, yeah, at the school or in groups, and then that person come to a group and they are smoking, the habit of smoking that that person create is more for the habit, for the satisfaction of the being in a group. So maybe that person start to 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 smoke just because that person feel accepted in that group. And the first time was only one time, and maybe the paradigm started like, oh, but when I smoke, I am a part of a group. So that person start to smoke, and then it create the habit, you know. So the habit is satisfying a need that we have, and it's why if you need to, if you want to quit smoking, you need to find why did I started to smoke, what need was there, and then create a habit that satisfies the same need but is more healthy. You understand me what I mean
Yes.
here? So it is that the habits are satisfying a need. And if you have, for example, here is like the habit of contacting people, or like the successful people um, do things that they even they don't like, but they know that by creating that habit, they will satisfy a need, you know. So when we create habits, we need to create habit that satisfies the need to reach our goals. That is what I was thinking about habit.
Yeah, I got you, Alicia. That's really good.
Yeah, yeah. So it's not, people aren't, they don't fail because they lack knowledge or talent,
No.
but because they fail to establish the right habits, as Alicia is saying.
Mhm.
It's not success, it's not an accident, it's not due to luck. It's the result of habitual behaviors, your habitual habits over time. And again, I'm going to go back to, the success that people see, or the successful people that you see. They're driven by that purpose. They've identified that perfect purpose and not a preference. There is a difference, right? They may not enjoy the actions that they need. Like Alicia said, they might not like those things, but they're attached to that really strong sense of purpose. And that's what motivates them to act anyway. See, most of us act on what we like to do, but successful people will act based on what they need to do. And that means they choose the long-term reward, that purpose that they see, over the short-term comfort, right? It's too easy, to give yourself an excuse. I'm going to sit down, I'm going to, scroll, and we waste time watching television, things like that. But anyone can develop the habit of success by simply choosing. It's not simple, but you choose discipline and purpose daily. You identify your purpose and you are consistent with your discipline. Jamel.
Yeah, this is so good because all of us here had to discipline ourselves and also find out what our desire is. This is every person, right? Every person desires more. And you can try to lie to yourself and say that you don't. But you do. You feel it inside, right? So what came to mind, happy Mother's Day to Lou. I know Lou is out there
Yeah, I
traveling.
miss you.
We usually have 4. So Lou, you're here with us. Safe travels and happy Mother's Day. Um, and I love this because both of you are talking about how the environment can shape the person. The outside world can shape you, like the smoking example Alicia shared. And it says people form habits and habits form futures. So, like, really look at your life. What are some negative habits you acquired through your environment or even your upbringing? right? And even habitual way of thinking. And all that's connected to your paradigm, right? Even your self-image. So, and it says, if you do not deliberately form good habits, then unconsciously you'll form bad ones, right? The smoking example, just because, you know, pretty much every high school or school in the US had like a smoking crew where you see like 5 or 10 people. Oh, I'm cool. I'm smoking cigarettes. So you have that section. And then you have the other crew that's athletes, where everyone's varsity. I was part of that group as well, where, you had basketball players, you had football players, you had basically sports people, right? Track as well. And then you have the book smart people that just studied and read everything. They had glasses at an early age. You see this different subsections of the environment, right? So people either allow the outside world to shape one's identity. This gets really deep, right? You're being shaped without even knowing where you're being pulled to or pushed to. So if you don't deliberately know what create the habits towards what you desire, you unconsciously create bad ones. So, bad ones that basically don't serve you to what you desire. You're going the opposite direction. So let's get into some habits here.
I wanted to say something there, because
Yeah.
here is why it's so important to have a purpose, because we humans have a protective mechanism that we're always will choose the habit that protect us. If the purpose is not big enough, we will choose the habit that is a protective mechanism. It can be like, if you are going to do something, you feel very tired all the time, or maybe you get a headache, or maybe you say, oh, poor me, or maybe you go away, and so you are busy being busy. Maybe all this can be protective mechanism. So in order to avoid that, it is the purpose that is so important, to say, okay, so this is my purpose, this is my habit, and I know that I have some protective mechanism that will want to keep me safe in this corner, but I want this. I see always the mountains in the pole's background. That is like, the mountain is you. You are the blocking what is the way, the road to what you want. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what I want to say.
yeah, that's really good. That always reminds me of that quote: "We're the problem and the solution." Right?
Yeah,
So we block ourselves
yeah,
basically.
yeah, yeah.
But that's because of lack of knowing, right? And this is why it's important to tune in to Coach's Corner. Now you're getting a knowing of yourself. And speaking of that, I forgot to mention earlier, feel free to drop some comments and questions live so, we can engage with you and help you out with whatever it is that's on your mind with this topic. So speaking of habits, the success habit for any area of achievement can be divided into 4 main groups. So the first one, and this is more towards, he says, this is debatable. He
Sales.
says, yeah, yeah. He says any area of achievement, but this is more into sales or like entrepreneurship, or you're building a business or something like that. He touches on what Alicia shares a little bit about the protective mechanism. And I think another author put it, we have a underlying desire to be loved.
Yeah.
That's where that comes from. I forgot
I
where I
think
read that.
I think that he also talk about that, the thing is that we don't like to talk to people about things that they
Yeah,
don't want to talk.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the first one, Number one, I'll just say them here, all four of them, and then we can go into detail each one if you want. Number one is contacting habits. Number two is calling habits. Number three is persuading habits. And four is working habits. So let's share the screen here and just kind of see where we want to go here and discuss. So let me share. So after these habits are
Maybe
mentioned,
you can zoom a little bit more.
yeah.
So it's,
Is that better?
yeah, better.
Okay. So he says, let's discuss these habits, habit groups in their order. So here, he says any successful person will tell you that it's easier to persuade someone. See, he goes into detail about persuasion, but then he talks about the type of people, well, just contacting, right? So as any successful person will tell you that it is easier to persuade someone to a particular course of action than to find someone who already wants to do it. But if you have not deliberately formed the habit of contacting those who need what you're offering, regardless of their wants, then unconsciously you have formed the habit of limiting your contacts to those people who already want what you have to offer. And therein lies one and only reason for lack of interested contact. So this is, like we said, mostly in sales. But if you think about it, sales is everywhere, right? Your own mindset, the clothes you buy, the house you own, everything, right? You've been sold in some type of way, whether consciously or unconsciously. Does anybody want to kind of talk about that a little bit? Where
Yeah,
he's sharing?
yeah, I can, because the habit of contacting people is not only, is like also I see that like to talk to people. So, uh, for example, I have many years ago a client, and that client told me that she was so tired of people not um, respecting her boundaries. And it was so difficult for her to contact that person, two, three person, and say, you know what, this is my boundary. Because we don't want to talk to people about things that we don't think they want to talk. And if you are coming to and say, you know what, I'm so tired of always being um, you being unrespectful for my values or my boundaries, is a protective mechanism not to do that, because fear of conflict, for example. So is contacting people with everything, not only in sales, but in different, like, okay, I need to talk to Paul about this, but I don't want to talk to him about that because maybe it's a conflict about that. So it's not only on sales, but it's also, I was also talking to another person, and he was talking about his own ideas. When somebody said something, he didn't wanted to say what he wanted or what his thought was about the thing, because he was afraid that people will not accept his idea. So it was the protective mechanism, that feeling that I don't want to go in a conflict with this person and this person, that kept him feeling bad, because, or feeling that he was not respected. So it's always like contacting people to talk about things that they don't want to hear.
Yeah,
Very
I
good.
think, I agree. That's a really good point, Alicia. And I think it's learning to have those difficult conversations, right? I mean, you want to avoid those difficult conversations, rather not have that conversation. But there's a way, there's a need to do that. It's not about being argumentative or, getting into, a fight with somebody but it's learning how to, proactively have those challenging and difficult situations or conversations with people. And yes, this article refers mostly to sales, but as Alicia said, there's these conflict resolution things that happen all the time in the workplace, in relationships, in families, and things like that. So it's really learning how to, approach someone and bring up that difficult conversation that you really need and want to have with them, to sort of clear the area and get to know, where they're coming from. And so that person knows where you're coming from, and to really just really have to establish you really need to learn how to approach and have those difficult conversations.
Yeah, this is so good. What comes to mind is the term sales, right? A lot of people have a negative mindset or idea of that because, and on both ends, as a customer and as a salesperson. So contacting, that is an action that's required, right? But for the customer, they desire more, but they may have this mindset of sales like, oh no, I don't want to talk to you because you're just going to try and sell me something. But remember, this is something I had to kind of really understand. Sales is something you do for a person, not to a person, right? And really look at sales. Like, for instance, we're on so many different platforms, right? We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, etc., right? Instagram here. The point is, we've been sold these ideas, right? These ideas that use these platforms, and I enjoy them. It's like a double-edged sword. But we've even been sold our mindset of what our full potential can be. So every day, we're actually being sold something, even subconsciously, right? Like when infomercials or commercials come on, or ads, you're seeing it over and over and over. And what's happening? You're being impressed. Your subconscious mind. It's a fleet of infomercials. So you're being sold information, ideas, mindset, limiting beliefs every day. So when do you get out of it? Right. And this is really good because we can talk all about this, but contacting is so important because you're interacting with other people that desire something that will take them to where they want to go. Basically, give them what they want. Right. So there was something you said, Paul, that was really good. I kind of went on a tangent there about sales because I want people to get a better idea of what sales really is. Sales is great, right? You bought the clothes you have, you bought the car you have, you had this idea. So let's move on to calling habits because I don't want to make this a part 3. So calling habits. Let's share here. Let's see. So as to calling habits, unless you have deliberately formed the habit of calling on people who are able to do what you want them to do, but who may be unwilling to listen, then unconsciously you have formed the habit of calling on people who are willing to listen, but unable to do what you want them to do. At first, I had to really think about that. I was like, oh, that's a clever way of saying it. Did anybody catch that? Like when you first read it, you're like, oh, that's kind of interesting.
It's almost like a tongue twister or something. Like, what? I have to read that again and again.
Yeah.
Correct. But yeah, so you just, again, as far as sales, right? I had that thing too. Like Jamel said, we're always thinking about like a salesperson, like a used car salesperson, or someone knocking on your door trying to sell you something. But we're all selling something. We're not necessarily selling a product, but we could be selling a service, or we might be selling an idea. And I remember like Bob saying, like a parent will sell to their kids the idea of eating vegetables. You know, you have to eat your vegetables, you have to eat your fruits, right? You're selling an idea. So how often do you get into a conversation somewhere where someone is trying to sell you on their idea? So we're always trying to sell someone on an idea or our service or what something that we can provide for them, or to help them, or to try and encourage them to come to our point of view. But this was a really interesting paragraph, and I had to read that over a couple of times. But you know, you're unconsciously have formed the habit of calling on people who are willing to listen, but unable to do what you want them to do. So you just want to talk to people who you know this person's willing to listen to me, but they really can't do what I want them to do. They can't really help me. They can't really do anything. Maybe they can just nod and agree with what I'm saying, but really it's nothing more than a sounding board. So again, it goes back to what I said earlier about having those difficult conversations. You know, you need to call on people. You need to talk to people. You need to speak to the people who, you know, are able to help you, but maybe they're not, it's tough to get them to listen. So again, you're coming back to that difficult conversation. You have to find a way to have those difficult conversations.
Yeah, I think that this time is also very, very like many people think that the telephone is like weighing 1 ton, or you know, people like to lift the phone and call, because people is so afraid what is the next. I normally say that for me it's okay to get a no from people, but I don't get a no from myself. So I say, okay, I call that person, and if it's okay if that person says no, but at least I didn't say no to myself when I call people. And it's a no is no, like not for now. So is how I think. But I think that it is so difficult at the moment that people and the new generation, they don't pick up the phone. They go by SMS or, you know, message, and so it's also difficult. But still, the protection mechanism is there, protecting us from get the no, and to feel what is you know, rejected is so difficult for many people.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, and every generation is a little different, right? Especially socially. So that's a whole nother
Yeah,
episode
yeah,
where where you have the era before the internet, and then you have the era when the internet was new, and then cell phones and etc. Right. So let's get on to persuasion habits here. Um, Share my screen again, if possible. So these are all connected, right? So as to persuasion habits, unless you have deliberately formed the habit of calling on people determined to help them see why it is in their best interest to take a particular course of action, then unconsciously you have formed the habit of calling on people while you are in a state of mind in which you're willing to let them make you see their reasons for not going along with you. Wow. Wow. That's a powerful statement. Persuasion habits. Now, you know, when it comes to persuasion, basically you got to help someone see why, what their desire is, right? You're showing themselves actually, right? But sometimes what happens, the paradigm doesn't see the value, right? And let's just talk about it, right? This we're talking about personal development here. Some people never invested in themselves to grow themselves or understand themselves. but they desire better results and they're stuck. They don't know why. And this is great example because persuasion habits are essential to growth for both sides, right? The customer and obviously the salesperson. This is so beautiful when you think about it, because if the persuasion, there's no habit there, it even tells you, right? Then unconsciously you have formed the habit of calling on people while you are in a state of mind in which you're willing to let them make you see their reasons for not going along with you. So basically, you're doing both parties are at a disservice to themselves without this habit. Now that I read this again, I'm seeing something different here. Anybody want to jump in?
Well, yeah, it's think about something that you're very passionate about, right? Then you have very little effort needed in like trying to tell the other person what it is that you believe in. You really have a real passion about, you believe in something that's happening in the world or in the community, and you, with great passion, you're willing to talk to anybody about it. And so again, you have to be driven by your purpose. If you really are, you're really locked into your purpose, then it will be easy for you to go out and attempt to persuade that person, because you're going to be passionate about your purpose. But if you're not really, then you're going to allow other people, as it said right here in this paragraph, you're going to allow another person, and you're going to be willing to talk to people who are going to tell you their reason for why they don't see things your way, or they don't want to do the things that you would like them to do. And they will talk, you're just allowing them, and not you're not going to be driven to try and persuade them, because you just don't have that, you're not passionate enough about your purpose. So you have to be, if you think about something that you really love and you're really passionate about, then it's easy to. So that's why you really need to identify your purpose, find out what it is, because that will drive you, and that will develop, and then you will develop the habits necessary. And whether that's a contacting habit or persuasion habit, that's why it's really necessary to really identify your purpose.
Yeah, I agree also. And here, the if you have a product or a service to sell, you need to persuade yourself first to be in love with that program, so that you go and talk to people about that with passion. Then you will persuade people with with your passion. Otherwise, you are trying to convince people from your intellectual part of your head to the other people's intellectual part. But in the persuasion, we talk from the heart, trying to understand other people and see how can I help that person with what I have. And I don't like, I say to myself, I am not in the convincing business. I want people, when they accept to work with me, that they are 100% persuasive about themselves, that they have persuasion about themselves, that this is good for me. And if they don't decide to work with me, I say, okay, it's okay from now. So I always ask, are you sure? Are you 100% sure that this is what you want? Because I know that to work with yourself, it will need some work. And if you are not 100%, then you will leave. And I can take a whole horse to the water, but I cannot make the horse to drink if it doesn't want. So so it's like, so I agree to the purpose should be very big, so you are passionate about that, and then you will persuade, and you will talk about about your product from your heart. Mm.
Yes, I love that. Talk about your product from your heart. I love that so much.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, Paul and Alicia, because you persuade yourself with, whatever you're offering,
Yeah.
right? You become a product of the product, and that's true. And all of us here are products of the product, right? That's why we're so passionate and we show up every Sunday for you. We're very, very passionate about this material, and this is golden. These are diamonds of knowledge that I'm so grateful I finally attracted in my life. And, I didn't really need much persuasion because I know the value in this and I experience it. And I think every walking human being should tap into what we share because it can give you anything you dreamed of. It really can. But everybody's on different levels, right? Everybody's on a different frequency. And you may have it in your mind, but you can have it in your hand as well. But if you're not open to growth, you'll remain where you are and keep wishing and hoping. So, and this should give you a different perception on sales because it's needed. It really is. It really is. So let's get to the fourth habit and we'll continue here. So the fourth was working habits, I believe. So let me share just so you can read with us. And again, feel free to drop some comments or questions in the whatever platform you're on. So that way, we can address you and help you out. That's why we're here. So as to working habits, if you will like to take care of other if you will take care of the other three groups, the working habits will generally take care of themselves because under working habits are included study and preparation, which we do, organization of time and efforts, which we do, records, analysis, etc. Certainly, you're not going to take the trouble to learn the best approach to your presentation unless you're going to use it. So you're not going to plan your day's activity when you know in your heart that you're not going to carry out your plans. And you're certainly not going to keep an honest record of things you haven't done or of results you haven't achieved. So let's not worry so much about the fourth group of thinking habits, because if you're taking care of the first three groups, most of the working habits will take care of themselves. So was there anything to share there, guys, on that one?
I only think that the working habit is like you if you have a business or something, a goal to do, you need to take action, because otherwise you will not get there where you want to be. So the working habits will be to make the list of the actions that you need to do to reach your goals and go and do that. Even if these things that you don't like, go with enthusiasm and do that. Enthuse with what you do. Is I think that is the best thing to do. You need to do that anyway. I remember that from my father. He always said to me, "But if you need to do things, do that with enthusiasm, because you need to do that anyway. So why not be happy and do that anyway?" So yeah.
Mm. Yeah, that's great advice. Paul, did you have anything there, or should we proceed?
Yeah, no, I just was kind of jumping ahead, but could all these habits and everything like that we're talking about, and the thing we just alluded to about the working habits, um, there's a couple paragraphs down from there, and I love it, where it says, any resolution or decision that you make, and it's a promise that you make to yourself, isn't worth anything until you form the habit of making it and keeping it, right?
Mhm.
And you have to keep it, and you know if you make that decision today, you have to do the same thing again tomorrow and the next day and the next day. It has to be kept and made each day, right? That consistency, the decision to do it. And if you miss a day or miss keeping it, then you've got to go back and start all over again. So, and there gives a really great example here. And I remember when there were more live events to attend, more workshops that were live and not online. And you could go to these great events on a weekend and you feel like, oh, like gung ho, like you leave and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to take all these things that I learned at this great seminar or workshop. And then, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, that energy, it just seems to wane. It just seems to go away. And so you have to make that promise to yourself to, incorporate that habit today, follow through consistently, and then, repeat, rinse and repeat, and do the same thing the following day and the following day. And don't overwhelm yourself looking at the top of the mountain, but just focus on that step you're taking now and make that promise to yourself and keep that promise to yourself. It's that decision, it's that discipline, and that purpose daily. And it's just a matter of decision and repetition. And I think Jamel mentioned repetition earlier about reading something repeatedly, but it's in those acts, in those habits, and that's where we will form those new habits that we want. Jamel.
Yes, very good, very good. And when you say the repetition, that reminds me of what's shared here about momentum when they talk about machines, right? How basically all machines require momentum. And that's what this repetition is, especially, in sales, so-called sales, right? Which sales is every industry. If you really think about it, we can do a whole call about that. But yeah, that's great. And remember, you're deciding every day to be. This is why the desire is important. You're becoming, right? Alicia shared a little bit about, persuading yourself about what you're offering and having that desire and that passion that will drive you. And I'm looking at the quote here. Your future is going to depend on your purpose in life. So, what is your purpose? Why are we here? Why are we here right now? Right? And I know a lot of people tune in, they look at all my social media posts and I go live and I do private calls and do all this, activity, and people get so hyped up and they get motivated, they get inspired, and then they go right back to their comfort zone. And then they just want another dose and they go back and forth, back and forth. It's indecision.
Yeah, why? Is because the normally we don't create the habits that, like, you give some ideas and then we need to take the idea and create a habit. But the thing is that most of people trust in the willpower, but the willpower is in the intellectual, and it's only like 3%, 2 to 5%, and you will not get, so the willpower will not help you. So it's why you need to create the habit, so you don't need to think, because our brains, the purpose of our brain is to keep us safe, to survive, not to grow, not to succeed. It's just to survive. And if you want to create something else, you need to create the habit of doing the things until you reach your goal.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't need to use the willpower, your brain, Yeah.
Paul?
I love the point that it discusses further in this article where, your purpose is you have to attach, your emotion to your purpose. You'll be driven by something that's emotional rather than it's just logical or your need. Like you will fill the things that you need quite easily and get to your needs, but that's not your purpose. Your purpose will be driven if you have attached emotion to it, not just logic, then you'll have that sense. You'll have that sense of purpose. You'll have that drive. You'll have that because you've attached emotion to it. But if you're not really emotionally engaged or emotionally involved in your idea, in the purpose that you want, it's not going to be enough to drive you to do these habits on a daily basis, in day in, day out type of thing. So really need to attach, think about something that you're like emotionally involved in. You'll go to great lengths to get it done. You'll go to great lengths to see that gets done, or you'll get this thing, or you'll do that thing when you have a real emotional attachment to it. So
Yeah,
make your
that's
purpose, tie
Yeah.
emotion to your purpose.
yeah, that's
Sorry,
so
Gino.
good. No, it's okay. Yeah, that's so good, Paul, because I'm looking right here. It says make a purpose of the sentimental or emotional type. Right? Remember that needs needs are logical, while wants and desires are sentimental and emotional.
Mm.
I had to underline that, and I'm put a star next to it, because logical, right? Remember that needs are logical. What do you really want? What do you desire? You want to connect to that emotional um, section of your body, of your spirit, because that emotion will will break you through any type of opposition. Right? It'll pull you in those times of need. So, and I was really thinking about that, because the more emotional you become with your purpose, first you got to figure out what your purpose is. What is the goal? What is the purpose? Once you have clarity of that, your emotion will drive you through anything. Make it sentimental. And he shared a good story at the end here, but let me kind of go to this last paragraph here. He says, am I sharing? No, I'm not. Let me find it. If it's a big purpose, there we go. If it's a big purpose, let me share my screen. We have a few more minutes. So he says, if your purpose is a big purpose, let's just do a keyword search here. Purpose. If it's a big purpose, you will be big in its accomplishment. If it's an unselfish purpose, you'll be unselfish in accomplishing it. And if it's an honest purpose, you'll be honest and honorable in accomplishing it. But as long as you live, don't ever forget that while you may succeed beyond your fondest hopes and your greatest expectations, you will never succeed beyond the purpose to which you are willing to surrender. Furthermore, your surrender will not be complete until you have formed the habit of doing things that unsuccessful people don't like to do. I always love how that's worded there. Willing to surrender to the purpose. That'll be a great topic to close on. Anybody want to share
Yeah,
thoughts?
yeah. I want to say something that Paul talked about before, and you talk about now about the needs, because the needs is logical, and is our ego that have needs. The need to have enough money and health, the need to be loved, and the need to be good enough. This is the needs. But then we have the soul. The souls are desires. We have the soul have not needs. It has desires. So it's why when you set your purpose, it should be connected to what your soul deep inside you want, not what your ego needs to survive, to feel safe, and to feel good enough. That is what I was my thought about that.
That's beautiful, Alicia. I really like that. So yeah, just my closing thoughts would be, again, that anyone can develop the habits of success. But you have to choose discipline and purpose daily. But it has to be something that you're emotional about. What is your purpose? I remember, I don't know who said it, but your purpose is doing what you love to do day in, day out on purpose. So it's not a matter of ability. It's a matter of decision and repetition. Jamel.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. This is so good.
I want to quit my with one challenge, and is to ask people to think which conversation are you avoiding at the moment that if you make that call or that contact will change everything for you. That is the
Yes.
Yeah.
Great question and statement as well, right? Contact us. Basically reach out to us. We're here to help you with this material. And I was trying to get my stick person because this is exactly what's happening, right? What is your emotional desire right here in the subconscious mind? It's your conscious and subconscious. Are you been focusing just on a life just to get by and satisfying needs? Or are you going after what you really want? It doesn't matter what the desire is. You want it because you desire to grow. And what is that goal? And we're always so passionate about this material because, we're showing up, we're rinsing and repeating, we're taking action, getting uncomfortable, shedding our old selves, our limiting beliefs about ourselves. And this article even speaks to people. It does say at the very beginning, it goes for all success. So you can see where you fit in with what was shared here. And, he even says, surrender to it, right? You want to surrender to that goal, whatever you desire. What you're doing is you're connecting with that energy. And then you'll start vibrating at a different frequency. This is your body. And then you'll start doing things that you normally don't do. You get out of the comfort zone. You draw a circle. Everything in that circle is what you've been doing every year, right? For years. What you want to do is what's outside of that circle, right? And how do you do that? It's tough being uncomfortable. But what happens is, as you're surrendering to the higher version of you, it starts to feel comfortable. You're shedding all this old skin that doesn't work anymore, that you don't need. So, and we're here to help you with that, right? We're here to guide you to that. And whatever that desire is, it's there for a reason. Do not just wish and hope and think about it. Set up a call with us today. I have some time today, but our links are in the description of whatever platform that you're on. And let's talk about this higher version of you. This has been a great live stream, especially for all the mothers out there, Mother's Day. I know, Alicia, they celebrate a different date, but happy early Mother's Day for you.
Thank you.
But yeah, make sure you tune in next Sunday and rewatch this replay if you missed some of it. And most importantly, take some action. Alicia had a very powerful question for you. And Alicia, did you want to share that again?
Yeah. Which conversation are you avoiding at the moment that if you have that conversation, it will make a difference in your life?
Perfect. Anything else, Paul?
Oh, that's good. I love that. That's a good way to close. Thank you, Alicia.
Thank you. Always a pleasure, guys. I appreciate you. Bye, everybody. We'll see you next Sunday, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Happy Mother's Day.
Bye.
Happy Mother's Day.